All right, this is part 2 of Unit 1 notes. So next up, we just kind of have to review the parts of our globe here. So we have 5 oceans. We have the Pacific, which is the largest, the Atlantic, and then we have the Indian and the Arctic. Now, these were the only oceans for quite some time, and then in recent years, the geographers got together and they decided that the big ocean that is south of in the Pacific, Atlantic, and the Indian should have its own name, and that's called the Southern Ocean. So the Southern Ocean was once just part of the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Indian, but now, depending on what map you look at or who you're talking to, there's also the Southern Ocean. So in this course, you have 5 oceans, but when we do the GOB, there'll be 4. We'll talk about that later. Then there are 7 continents. We have North America, which was very, very enthusiastic and jumped up right away. South America, which is in the Western Hemisphere. Europe, Africa, Asia, which is the largest continent, and then Oceania and Australia. So Oceania is called the liquid continent. It contains Australia, New Zealand, and the islands of Polynesia. Now, if you again, some geographers still consider Australia as a continent, but it is now considered part of Oceania, depending on who you're talking to. Again, when we get to the GOB, we'll go over more of that. But you need to know your 7 continents: North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Antarctica, and Oceania. And I know you've learned that before in your earlier years, but this is just a good review. So there are many, many different kinds of maps and purposes, but globes are the truest representation of the Earth. The Earth is round, okay? Even though there are some conspiracy theories out there, it is round. That's what, it is round. It is not flat. Scale and their shape, it's not feasible to be carrying around a globe to get where you need to go. So that's why the invention of the map occurred, so you could make it portable and take things with you, so you can not, so again, to not get lost and to not die. So maps are a flat representation of the Earth, but unfortunately, they're not round. They're distorted. So a lot of times we call maps a map projection, meaning that they take the Earth and they try to smash it and make it flat, but it's never ever perfect. It's always somewhat off, okay? So map projections, the earliest map projection, the very first person that is credited with making a map from the globe, because again, they took the globe, they took a candle, stuck it in there, and they traced a globe, and they made something called the Mercator projection. And it was pretty good. It wasn't very accurate, unfortunately, because again, it was tracing shadows. So when you were further away from the light, it was smaller, and as you got closer in the middle of the globe, things were wider than they should be, so they were distorted. So then we have the Peters, which is a lot more accurate, and that was in the past 20, 30 years right now, and that is much more accurate. And here's an example. So this is the Mercator. As you can see right here, South America and Africa look super, super tiny. And then Greenland is huge. And so Antarctica looks gigantic too. So when you go to the edges here where the shadows were, you can see it's much larger than it should be. All right, so take a look at that. And then, of course, this has been modernized. The first Mercator map didn't even have all of the land masses here that are here, but they use the same calculations as Mercator for this modern map. This is the Peters. Let's look at 2 of them, see how different they are. So the Peters is actually used legitimate maps. This is how big Africa really is, and this is how big South America is, but the location might be a little bit off. So you can never really have a perfect map. They're always going to be a little bit off, but they're called map projections, okay? And there are hundreds of different map projections from all different kinds of cartographers, but here are 2 major ones that you need to know: the Mercator and the Peters. There are many different kinds of maps, okay, and I'll be sharing with you some examples. So very quickly, we have physical maps, political maps, and thematic maps. And a cartographer is a maker of maps. Okay, so we have a cartographer, which is a maker of maps. So I will be giving you some examples of all of these different kinds of maps. Okay, so make sure you can pause at any time to fill in these things.